While the latest episode of The Boys wasn't quite as traumatic and as R-rated as Herogasm, it did deliver some shocking bombshells, including Homelander's lineage and the reason why Soldier Boy was abducted by the Russians in the first place. But that's the things that you probably caught. And this is a things you missed video. So let's just cut all of this intro crap out of here and get right to the meat of the video, shall we? So we kind of all guessed it already, seeing as goo is leaking out of their ears and they end up vomiting up luminescent puke, but episode 7 confirmed that while the superpowers temporary V give you don't last, they do leave you with permanent fatal side effects, meaning Huey and Butcher are in for some trouble. As Starlight searches through Vought labs looking for a permanent V to give to Kimiko, she comes across some papers that tell the true nature of temporary V. And although they only show the effects very briefly, we understand that it's all not very good. If you didn't catch everything that it says on the papers, we can give you a quick rundown here, with it being revealed that taking temporary V causes the creation of hyper-accelerated malignant tumors. So basically they just have all of the cancer, and on top of that there's also atrophy of the cortex, which is a degenerative brain and nervous system syndrome which can eventually lead to a decline in memory and cognitive abilities. If you've seen Peaky Blinders season 6, this may all sound pretty familiar to you. On top of that, it is revealed that there is an accelerated growth of the tumor with each dose, and it will eventually lead to the user having seizures every 1 to 2 hours or so. Now, while I don't personally have an exact count, Huey has roughly 3 doses, but so far hasn't exceeded 5. But if he takes even 1 dose, he's already at risk of becoming terminally ill. However, for Butcher, it might already be too late, as he is definitely shot up at least 5 times, meaning he will likely feel the repercussions of using temporary V in the recently announced 4th season of the show. All of which could mean that Butcher's days might be numbered, meaning the target on Homelander's back will be even larger. One thought I do have though is, could he take permanent V instead, and will that be enough to save him? Or is the damage already done? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Another bombshell dropped in the show is the revelation that Soldier Boy is actually Homelander's biological father.
What? That's impossible!
Which is definitely not good news for anybody, including Homelander. This is actually pretty similar to the comics, but it's not actually Soldier Boy who was his biological father, but it was actually another member of Payback, Stormfront. That's right, the character who is his partner, for lack of a better word, in the show is his father in the comics, as it is revealed that he is the progeny of genetic material taken from Stormfront, who's a dude in the comics if you haven't picked that up already, who was injected with Compound V while he was still a member of the Hitler Youth. Homelander seemingly wants to keep the chain of soups going, with him telling Maeve that he plans to harvest her eggs to create a new superchild, which is an absolutely terrifying prospect as well as extremely problematic for a lot of different reasons. Yet another bombshell that was dropped in the episode was the backstory, which was shown in animated form, between Soldier Boy and Black Noir, and how Soldier Boy is directly responsible for the scarring that Black Noir has. We always knew the Black Noir was kind of a weird dude, but not to that extreme, as it is revealed that he has hallucinated animated characters, such as the chipmunk with the Porky Pig style stutter, who we saw in a sketch earlier on in the season, who forces Noir to face his demons, and the horrific abuse that he received from Soldier Boy. It is then revealed that Edgar approved taking down Soldier Boy and plotted for the rest of the team to betray him and take him out. But what is probably the most interesting aspect of this animated flashback is the animals Black Noir subconsciously chose to represent each character. Now, we may be looking a little bit too much into it, but Soldier Boy is represented as a bald eagle, which is associated with power, strength, and of course, good old America. Crimson Countess is portrayed as a fox, which is associated with beauty, intelligence, and independence, and Edgar is portrayed as a meerkat, which are often associated with protection and community. But of course, the most important one out of the bunch is Noir himself, who is represented as a black sheep, which, as you know, basically means that he's an outcast of some sort and is a person who has done something bad that brings embarrassment or shame to his or her family. In this case, it would be the pseudo family, and the shame would likely be his betrayal of Soldier Boy. As I said, might be looking just a tad bit too deep into it, but you know. A new character that was introduced into The Boys was Mindstorm, who ended up putting Butcher into a living nightmare until Huey eventually convinced Mindstorm to release him. Now, while there isn't a Mindstorm in the comics, there is a member of the Payback team who does have a similar name, Mindroid. Now, despite his name, and the fact that he's a parody of Marvel's Vision and Iron Man, Mindroid isn't actually an AI, but a human in a robot suit who has limited telepathic powers as well as the ability to fly a jetpack. And it is actually him that has a romantic relationship with Crimson Countess in the comics. Kind of like how, Vision and Scarlet Witch are paired up. Other than providing a crucial look into Butcher's backstory, more on that later, Amazon may have opted to change the character, as he is arguably close to yet another character on their roster of television shows, Robot from Invincible. Speaking of Payback though, we are seeing more and more of the group throughout the season, whether it be through the animated flashbacks or the poster on the wall of Legend's house, which actually kind of looks like a reference to a 1999 Mel Gibson movie. In the show, Payback, an obvious nod to the Avengers, are the team that preceded the Seven, but in the comics their history is a little different. Payback are the second most popular super team in the US, behind the Seven. All of them at one point tried to join the Seven but ultimately failed, and were actually paid by Vought to go after the boys, but ended up failing pretty badly as most of them met their end at the hands of Butcher. As we mentioned, we get to see a glimpse into Butcher's backstory as we see his anger and violence stemming from his relationship with his dad, and his relationship with Huey stemming from the death of his brother, who unalived himself when Butcher went off to join the army. Butcher has a lot of remorse about how his brother died, and through the use of editing, we see that he is concerned that he will make the same mistakes with his new pseudo-brother Huey, as he reminds Butcher of Lenny in both personality and looks. Lenny also had a calming effect on Butcher in the comics until his eventual death, but the way he died is a lot different on the show, with Lenny being hit by a bus while he was at college. Also, I know that this might be super nitpicky, but did anyone else notice that the Butcher boys had posters on their walls for both West Ham United and Charlton Athletic? I mean, maybe Billy was a West Ham and Lenny was a Charlton fan, but no self-respecting football fan would have posters up for both of these two teams on their walls. Although it's really not that surprising that Butcher would be a West Ham fan. I could totally see him in Green Street. Now, we already mentioned that there was a Rambo 3 reference in episode 6 of The Boys, back in our previous video, which if you haven't watched, go ahead and check out. But was the whole Mindstorm storyline a reference to First Blood? I mean, a manhunt in the woods involving a former soldier suffering from mental health issues does sound pretty familiar, doesn't it? Or is that just a little bit too much of a stretch? Let me know. As you know, basically everything Soulja Boy does and says doesn't fly in today's day and age.
If taking drugs is uncool, I'm the most uncool motherfucker on the planet.
But some of his jokes do make much more sense in context. For instance, Soulja Boy refers to Mindstorm as Howard Hughes without the piss pots after learning that he has bought up a bunch of cabins across the states in order to hide himself. To provide some context, Howard Hughes was a famous business magnate, film director, and record-setting pilot, among other things, and was known for having a number of cabins, such as his most famous one on Lake Tahoe, where he would throw lavish parties. While the piss pot line was a reference to the reported fact that in his later years as a recluse, Hughes would store his own urine in mason jars, although I'm not well enough informed to know if that's true or not. Soulja Boy also tells Huey that if he keeps talking, he would slap him like Connery, which is a reference to Sean Connery's rather infamous quote about slapping women. And to be honest, likely a reference to the early Bond movies, which are kind of questionable these days if you really just sit back and think about it. Now, in previous videos, we've given you one possible Sylvester Stallone Easter egg, but how about another one? In the animated flashback, it is revealed that Noir was up for the role of Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop, until Soulja Boy sabotages this, saying that he wasn't funny enough to take the role, which was of course then played by Eddie Murphy. The reason this could be a nod to Stallone is the fact that he was originally attached to the project after the success of First Blood, but he didn't care for the humor, and ended up taking the script and turning it into a straight action movie, which turned out to be the movie he made in 1986, Cobra. Paramount weren't exactly too keen on these changes, due to the fact that it would have increased the budget significantly, and Stallone ended up leaving the project before being replaced by Murphy. Man, first talking about brain tumors and now the pre-production history of Beverly Hills Cop. This video is all over the place. This next reference is also pretty subjective, but did anyone else think that the scene where Homelander hallucinates Soulja Boy while giving a speech at Singer's rally was like the veiled assassination scene in Taxi Driver? I mean, both Travis Bickle and Soulja Boy are murderous military characters with PTSD, and the whole framing of the scene gave me some pretty strong Taxi Driver vibes. But yeah, I'll admit that that one might just be completely subjective and not actually real. Still though, cool sequence. We have seen throughout the show Vought's equivalent of major companies, such as Voughtland and Vought Networks, and it would seem that they have a space branch as well. As Cassandra argues with the Deep after the whole troubling scene with the octopus, Cassandra tells the Deep that she left a VASA role for him, which suggests that Vought have their own version of NASA. Perhaps, like Elon, they're trying to colonize Mars as well, only with slightly more problematic super people. While the boys likes to skewer tropes, as we mentioned in other episodes of this series, they are still guilty of committing them every now and then, such as the moment where Starlight catches Homelander confessing and airing out his dirty laundry on her livestream. This is a movie/television cliche that has been seen multiple times, like in Knives Out and Zootopia, just to name a few. While Jack Quaid's Huey Campbell is the most famous Huey on The Boys, he's not the only one to appear in the episode. On the wall of MM's apartment, we see a poster of Huey Newton, who is famously known as the founder of the Black Panther Party and who crafted the party's 10-point manifesto with Bobby Seale in 1966. And just a quick one here, at the beginning of the episode, Soldier Boy treats us with his singing, as he performs a rendition of If You Wanna Be Happy by Jimmy Soul, which, if you look at the lyrics, is another thing that doesn't fly in today's day and age. If that video was itself a parody of a particular commercial that I just don't know about, make sure you let me know down in the comments below. And now let's end with our favorite segment. What is MM wearing? We have already seen him in hip-hop clothing throughout the season, wearing shirts for NWA and Rough Riders, and it looks like he is back at it again in this episode, with him sporting a DMX shirt. Can't say that the man doesn't have taste.